Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes. Welcome back to Connections Corner, where you send us your reviews, your comments, your emails, and we read them right back to you. This is us trying to reach out in connection to you. So you're not just speaking into a void and communicating how our podcast is affecting your life and no one's listening. We want you to know that we are listening. And so today we are going to read a review back to you. Today's review comes from Tiffany.
Tiffany says, your best TTC friends. I've listened to the show way too long to have not already written a review. My previous podcast app didn't actually have a review option, so here we are. Caitlin and Sophia are such a dynamic duo, filled with brilliant insight and humor to educate and empower women on their TTC journey with nutritional advice and so much more. I found their page after a loss in 2021. Their guidance accompanied me as I got pregnant again and have since delivered a beautiful baby boy who's almost 6 months old. If you need some advice along the way, these two have so much wisdom to share. Yeah, girl.
Yeah, girl.
I love how she put that in there.
That is awesome. Oh, Tiffany, thank you so much for this beautiful review. Congratulations on your sweet baby born. We could not be happier for you. And we feel so honored that you left us such a beautiful comment and that our work is touching your life.
To another episode of the Food, Freedom, and Fertility podcast. I am here with my lovely co-host today, Sophia Pavia.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Caitlin Johnson. We are both functional medicine dietitians. We're registered dietitians. And we work a lot in the integrative space, helping people find tools and resources, look at their body in a holistic way to be in the driver's seat in their fertility and their health, growing their family. And today we have a special guest with us. We have Hannah Bowers. She's an integrative nutrition health coach, certified lactation counselor, host of the Baby Dust Fertility podcast, and writer who's passionate about supporting women from preconception and infertility through postpartum. She has a bachelor's degree in health sciences, has been diagnosed with PCOS, has her own fertility story, which we're going to get a little bit of that today, and lives in Columbus, Ohio with her two children.
Hey,
got an Ohio
Columbus,
gal.
Ohio.
Yeah. I did my internship in Ohio. We were probably within an hour of each other at one point in time.
Nice.
My whole family's from Lancaster, Ohio.
Oh, I didn't know that. So
Yeah, that's 45 minutes from me.
And I've recently been watching a true crime show called Froggers. And I think the production team is in Ohio, or there are just a lot of froggers in Ohio. Do you know about what frogging is?
I don't
Froggers?
know. No.
It's secretly living in somebody else's house while they are also living there.
Oh, wow.
what? Ohio's got some weird things, I will
like
say.
People that like live
We
in
do,
your attic
yeah.
and then like sneak down in the night and drink your milk, or like
Very
eat
comforting.
your food, or just be a freaking weirdo
Why
that's
do they
just
call it
creeping around in your
Frogger
house.
and not like a mice or?
I don't know, but it's Frogger with a PH.
Oh,
Frogger PH. Frogger.
interesting. Well,
Yeah,
creepy.
it's like all these weird stories about, like, some of them are like, I used to have this tenant and he stopped paying and so we kicked him out, and then, you know, a few weeks later we noticed this weird stuff happening, but you just reason it away because you're like, okay, there's no way someone just drank this cup of coffee I poured. Did I spill it?
Thought.
Did I not actually pour it? Because you're like, there's just no way. So what, someone broke in and drank my coffee and left? And yeah, someone broke in and drank coffee.
Actually, they didn't break in. They snuck out.
They've been in here the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got a sleeping bag in your crawl space.
Okay, so you have an education, listeners, on what a
Not
Frogger
into this,
is with a PH. That's not what you're here for. You probably
PhD,
heard
Frogger doctorate.
PhD. So Hannah's here. We are going to talk about navigating the internet and everything that comes with that while you're trying to conceive.
Including true crime Frogger shows.
Oh my God. Things to be aware of, discerning the reliability of experts, finding your community, and so much more. So Hannah, why don't you give us just like a little view into why you're the girl we should be talking to about this? Because people may not know, like I didn't know when I was chatting with you, what you've created. And then if there's like an easy segue into your superhero origin story in your fertility journey, or we can kind of dive into that after you explain what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to just jump into this and have random Frogger conversations as well as that, like makes its way.
It's on Hulu
today. Okay.
You want to watch it.
I'll have to check it out.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, like you said, I'm an integrative nutrition health coach. I went to school. I have a bachelor's degree in health sciences. I love fertility, which comes a lot from my own journey, which I'll share here in a minute. But a couple years ago, I decided to kind of step really into this fertility space. I'd started a community on Facebook, really just recognizing, when I entered into the fertility space as a patient, that I felt like there wasn't a whole lot of good information. We're talking almost a decade ago at this point. Wasn't a lot of good information. I really didn't know where to turn to connect with people. And so I decided to start this Facebook community as a way to share useful things that I had learned, share, just start trying to create safety, support, and just connect with others who kind of had been on the same trajectory. And so that grew so quickly. We're now up to about 20,000 women in our community, super active. And I love it because it's this incredible window into all sorts of different pieces of the fertility journey, all sorts of different places that people have navigated to. And I think one of the most surprising things for me that was a really eye-opening of having this large space was just recognizing all of a sudden that as the internet has evolved, as social media has grown, as more people have come on the space for fertility, there's just a lot of confusing and overwhelming and even just straightforward wrong things that are getting permeated.
So you got the truth.
I know. It's so frustrating because it's like you want to give each person this like, hey, let me direct you to this expert or let me direct you to that expert. But just realizing that there's just this massive hole where we kind of have to, just step into it and just help guide people. I think looking back at my own journey when I started, I had no scientific background whatsoever. I had no understanding of how to read a study, how to evaluate an expert, how to know whether or not what I had just read on the internet was going to actually apply to me. It was more like, that great guessing game of, all right, we'll research this, we'll kind of do our best. And I'm really grateful that in our fertility journey, that first fertility journey, it worked out well. But oh my goodness, it's just been this eye-opening discovery that we're at a point now where we actually need to start educating on how to fully vet who it is that you're listening to and taking advice from and going to.
Yes. Yeah, especially, I think PCOS is sort of special in that way too, because 10 years ago, it may have been there was nobody. Now there's everybody.
Yeah, so
and
true.
There's so much. And so much conflicting information. Like I was with a girlfriend of mine. This was, maybe like 4 years ago now. It was a while ago. And she has PCOS. And we're like in a church retreat type setting. And the meal was like some sort of pasta and then like some beef and something else. And she was like eating only the pasta. She's like, well, I have PCOS. I'm not supposed to be eating beef. And I was like, oh, okay.
Well, it's like, take a deep breath.
And I'm like, so you're having like literally an all pasta meal because beef is bad for PCOS. Like the pasta meal is bad for PCOS. And she's always posting about, like it's so hard. She's always struggling with her weight because of PCOS. and she's eating like all carb meals all the time, and going and getting these big sugary coffee drinks, and just not understanding at all what drives this disease. And you know what? You can find a lot of people online saying everything she's doing is just great, and
it's really scary.
And that PCOS just be like that, and it's just the way that it is, and everyone with PCOS is going to weigh over 300 pounds because that's just the way it goes, and you will never ovulate because it is infertility, and
or the other end of the spectrum, not even just like online. Their doctor told them, I mean, you had a massage once or something from a lady whose doctor told her at PCOS diagnosis, like, you won't have children. And so she never tried.
And here she was well into her 40s with just, this is her life. Babies were never going to be a piece of the puzzle for her.
Yeah. And so there's like,
still haunts me.
There's like such wide ends of the spectrum. Okay. I propose we play a quick game called Name Your One or Two Favorite Pieces of Information You've Heard Online that would support your fertility that is completely bogus, or just like maybe it could help, but it has no scientific research. Okay.
Let me pull up in the comments of my most recent post.
And just remember, listeners, as you're hearing this is the context. We're not saying eating pineapple is going to make you ovulate. This is us playing a little game before we get into the heavier stuff. So I'm going to play host. And let's go back and forth, maybe 2 or 3 funny ones. Everybody game? You feel like you have a couple on the top of your list?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. All right. We're going to let Sophia tee off.
All right.
Okay, let me tee off here. Let's say that if you want to have a girl, you have to do it only missionary.
That's a good one.
Do people know what missionary is? Does everyone?
Missionary is where the lady lieth on her back with her legs with her legs up in imagine you're getting a pap smear.
Yes,
get in that position. You know how comfortable that is. You remember how much you love that and how sexy you feel at that moment. That is the kind of sex you should be having.
If you want a girl,
the man lies on top of her and inserts his penis.
Okay, that's enough. All right, that's a good one. So
something really quick. We went. Oh no, never mind. You know what? I won't say this because it's something that could be embarrassing to my child later in life. Let's just say she said something funny, but I don't want it to live forever on the internet.
Hannah, your turn.
Yeah. So we actually hear this regularly in our group, which I'm like, blah. But if you want to get pregnant, you need to do the day after ovulation and the day after that, and those are your goal days.
Day after ovulation and the day after that. That is exactly wrong. If you wait
if you want to get to the Black Friday sale, you need to wait till 2 days after Thanksgiving.
You need to wait till Tuesday, basically, and you'll miss the boat and missed Cyber Monday. Okay, so not only is that bad information, I mean, having sex in a missionary style, you could still potentially get pregnant. Having sex the day after and the day after that of ovulation, 1 and 2 days after ovulation, you have almost a 0% chance of getting pregnant. Wow. So that's a huge one. Yeah. Okay. Bingity bong, back to Sophia.
Okay, let's see. Another one, Caitlin kind of touched on this, is that pineapple is a magical fertility food. And if you eat a pineapple or a pineapple core during your 2-week wait, you will become pregnant and increase your likelihood of having a boy.
And on the flip side, don't eat pineapple when you are pregnant because it contains an enzyme that
will make your baby gay or something. What do they think it's going to do?
They think it's going to do.
I don't know what they think it's going to do.
What is it? Bromelain?
Bromelain, yeah.
Bromelain? Yeah. Bippity boppity boo. Back to Hannah.
The one another one, if you want to get pregnant, it doesn't matter what you eat. You just have to go to Walmart and buy a prenatal.
Wow. Oh, that's got me here with another one.
Okay. To one up each of you, one more, and then we're going to our commercial break.
You need folic acid, baby. Folic acid. You need to be dropping that acid every day in order to get pregnant.
Ooh.
Oh,
And
if you have questions about that, refer to the episode with Lily Nichols this season.
Exactly.
Okay, Hannah, back to you for the final.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off that one, and that more folic acid is gonna help you get there faster.
The more, the better. Just burn your insides with acid as much as you can get.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this game of what crazy thing have you heard this week and will not help you get pregnant and may actually make it more difficult for you to get pregnant. Now for a break from one of our sponsors.
We're taking a break to talk about our sponsor, Fertility Cloud. In working with hundreds of you ladies, we have noticed a problem that has come up. I know it's come up for me, Caitlin. It's come up for your clients as well. And that is not only finding a doctor who is going to know how to help you, but one that wants to. We have a lot of issues here, and sometimes getting a simple blood test or actually getting a medication or talking to someone who's actually an expert in fertility can not only take an insane amount of time, but it can feel like you're fighting your doctor.
Yeah, or you're playing like Russian roulette to get in front of somebody who actually cares. We are so excited to be partnering with Fertility Cloud because they have a solution for all of these frustrations. Just last week, I had a client that needed right now care, and we couldn't get her in front of an OB. And she got a same-day appointment with Fertility Cloud and spoke to a reproductive endocrinologist and had a prescription that she needed in her hand hours later. This is a solution that our industry desperately needs, and we are so excited to present to you.
So if you're in a remote area and you have to drive 4 hours to go see a doctor, or if you've been to multiple doctors and none of them seem to really listen or really care or want to take an approach that works for you, start up with My Fertility Cloud.
My Fertility Cloud has provided us a link, so check it out in the show notes. That will get you $25 off your first visit with one of their providers.
We're taking a quick break from this episode to talk about one of our sponsors, the Prenatal Nutrition Library.
We love the Prenatal Nutrition Library. It's a searchable database and app, which means you have answers within seconds and peace of mind that what you're eating during pregnancy is both safe and nutritious.
It's almost like having your own personal pregnancy dietitian in your back pocket that's going to not only tell you, is it safe to eat this? How much of that should I have? Yada, yada, yada. But give you actual meal plans so you know how to put it all together onto your plate today. And the meal plans are trimester specific, meaning, some women are kind of nauseous in their first trimester and maybe they need specific foods to help combat that. Prenatal Nutrition Library has got you covered. Or the fact that your baby's brain is growing rapidly in your third trimester and you need your nutrition to support that. Prenatal Nutrition Library meal plans has got you covered there too.
This is evidence-based information. Registered dietitians are in this app weekly answering members' questions. There's an exclusive podcast within the app that's run by Ryan, who is the prenatal dietitian that founded this entire thing. It's a wealth of knowledge and resources and will take you far beyond that one-page handout your doctor handed you that actually probably has out-of-date information about eating in pregnancy.
So head on over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library as soon as you get your big fat positive. Well, okay, first message me and Caitlin so we can do a happy dance with you. Then head over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library to get clear strategies to meet your nutrient needs, as well as to take the stress out of confirming what's safe and most optimal for you and your baby while you're pregnant. Use code FFF20 for 20% off.
All right. And we are back from our break. Hannah, can you tell us a little bit about your story getting pregnant and just like what has really drawn you to this specific community you serve?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I had shared when we kind of talked a little bit before, we've been on our own fertility journey for about a decade now. And it started, we were a couple weeks into being married. I kind of knew that maybe there was something not quite right about my cycle, but ended up with this long period of bleeding that just did not seem right. So we went to our first OBGYN appointment trying to get to the bottom of it. And pretty much as soon as she walked in the door, didn't even really evaluate. She didn't end up sending me for an ultrasound, but she was just like, oh, you've got PCOS. You won't get pregnant.
Oh, boy.
Whenever you're ready, just come back for the meds and we'll just hook you up. And I remember like we were married, I was pretty young and didn't really know anything about my cycle, but I remember leaving that appointment and was kind of like, I don't feel like I have any further insight or answers into what's going on here. I don't know what this PCOS thing is. And it seems super extreme to suddenly be telling me that, boom, that's that.
Mm-hmm.
And so my husband was like, well, we lived in a small town, but we had 2 big medical systems. That probably doesn't speak well of our small town. But he's like, let's go to the other medical system. We'll find someone else. We'll go see him. Hey, maybe we'll have a better experience. And it was not better. That experience was even worse.
No.
And so we walked into that one. I don't think it was a male OBGYN, and
Of course.
he did not even listen. I remember it just like the whole thing start to finish was just kind of like a ugh feeling. But he went through the exact same routine, walked in the door, hardly even asked us questions, was just like PCOS, you can't get pregnant, you come back when you want meds, you go home. And that was the extent of the journey. And we were like, this can't possibly be the only thing that is the option for us. And so we kind of started out just like I said, there really wasn't any information at that time that we could find, no books at the library. The internet had very little to offer us. And so we just started trying to sift through things, trying to read things. And here and there got these little breadcrumbs like, oh, hey, if we start maybe thinking about what I'm eating, that might help my body. Or maybe if we start doing some of these other optimizations, or someone had given me, I think my mom actually had given me this book on basal body temping, like to try to connect with my cycle.
Taking Charge of Your Fertility, was that the book?
It wasn't, but I do have that book now. No, I don't even remember what this book was.
That was the OG that I remember, but cool.
She had this book from, I think she got it in the 90s. It was very old, but it was very visual, which I really appreciated. So like,
Nice.
Started going down that path of like, okay, let's kind of just figure these things out. And I've had like some other health problems that we were at the time trying to navigate. And about 6 months into making some shifts, to making, some strategic changes, I ended up getting treatment for another condition and suddenly found myself staring at a positive pregnancy test, which was like, how
Did you take steroids?
I did not. No, I got put on an antihistamine because I'm like, my system thinks it's allergic to most things, which is another discussion for another day. But so it was like this shock of, oh my goodness, what is this? And so we were super excited. But unfortunately that ended up being a miscarriage just a couple weeks later.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you. It was like I don't know. It was like you went up on the roller coaster.
Right.
And then you just kind of like
the butterflies
dropped down. Yeah.
And realized that they didn't like actually lock you in. And so now are you falling down, but you're also afraid of everything.
Right? Yeah. So that was kind of like a shock moment. And I remember even recently I was reflecting on that because I just did a podcast episode on my show kind of reflecting on that journey. And it was like, miscarriage, you go through that and you're like, miscarriage doesn't happen to me. What are you talking about? This is like not my thing. But that really just further reiterated this need to dive in and figure out like, what can we do to help my body become as healthy and balanced as possible so that we can actually intentionally grow our family. And so we dug in. We spent about 6 months of really working on eating. I mean, at that time, I look back to what I was eating and I did make improvements. I laugh now with what I've learned over the years. They weren't great improvements, but they were enough of an improvement at that stage and at that time. Bought a few supplements that we had just researched as much as we possibly could out of, tried to do our best there. And about 6 months later, we found out we were expecting our now 6-year-old. So it was kind of like I'm so grateful, it was a short journey comparatively to a lot of what other people have gone through. But yeah, that was the initial introduction to like, hey, we can actually do some stuff about this. And so we have another son who's 3, and we're expecting a third relatively soon. Which
there's a baby in your womb.
There is a very big baby at this point.
That's what my daughter always says. She says, "You got baby in your womb."
Oh, that's so sweet. But yeah, so it's now been, almost 10 years of making lifestyle shifts and learning. And about 6 years ago, I realized that I had such a deep passion for this that I wanted to figure out what it would look like to be able to shift from being just a patient in this world, in this community, to being able to support people. And so that's when, at that time, I started pursuing my bachelor's degree. I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and I have other goals and plans. I would like to be able to maybe eventually be more in a clinical setting. But for now, I just am so passionate about trying to connect people with resources, because I look back and think, I wish that I'd had even the basic resources. Like, I wish I'd had some of those things that were like, this is your cycle. This is what you need to know about ovulation. Like, going back to like the very granular level 1 type stuff.
And do it in a way that communicates to the women of fertile age right now, which, the three of us are kind of, I'm guessing, in the millennial period where we still like audiobooks and reading and, but we can fast forward 10 years and a lot of people have consumed things in way smaller chunks, and they maybe needs a strong word. They would prefer information to come in different ways, and getting to that trusted source of information, having somebody to kind of curate, these are great resources, point you in the right direction, hold your hand when you had a really hard day. Maybe your cycle came, maybe you had a miscarriage, maybe you still haven't ovulated, maybe you got bad news from the doctor. Like, I can just see how your experience and your passion and maybe calling to this work has fueled a really interesting way to support women with that very large and thriving community that you've built on Facebook.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I hope so. It's the goal is to make it as easy for other women to get access to good information, get access to good experts, and not have to like dig around on their own for it.
What do you think about like that switch when you went from this is just a community to now I have this like huge thriving community? When did you start the podcast? Like, when did you go like, oh, this is a little bit more of a thing?
Yeah, so I'd say the community has been around for a couple of years. And it was really during early COVID that I saw this shift of people suddenly flocking to the community. People had time, people were suddenly on the internet reading.
Their cycles were canceled.
Yeah, that was a big thing. I remember we had so many posts of just frustrated and upset women, venting like, I've been waiting on this cycle, I've been planning for it, and I just got a call this morning.
I've already bought all the medicines.
Yeah.
I've already taken
using them.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of felt,
these medicines are like $20,000. It's not like, oh, I filled my $10 prescription.
Right.
It kind of, it was like a kick in the gut period of time, to be honest, to just read these post after post. But that was kind of the point where it became so evident. I'd made the shift to fertility a little bit before then, but that was the time where it was just like, okay, there is a need and a desire here in this community for more resources. And so last year when I was, we're moving into the fall, and I wanted to just get input from our members, like, what is it that you are looking for? What are the resources you want to hear from? And I just kept getting this resounding, we want to hear from experts who have a track record in being able to do something with fertility conditions. And I took that as...
Yeah, not to someone that's been sitting in their classroom teaching and looking at research in the world of academia removed from actual patient care, but people that have a track record of success. Yeah, I see that same thing.
And it was interesting because I'd say a large majority of our community are women who have gone the conventional route. They've done rounds and rounds. They've done, they've done faithfully everything that has been handed to them to do, and they have not achieved pregnancy. And so they didn't want to hear from those types of providers because they've already seen them. They wanted to hear from the providers who maybe were outside the box thinkers, people who had maybe done something a little bit different to help a certain patient demographic. And so that's where the podcast launched and really opened my eyes to like a whole new area of like beyond just the basics, beyond just better understanding how to know you've ovulated. Like, here are the resources of the people that you can go to that might be able to provide some different insight.
Right. And that was how I got invited. You should totally invite Sophia and do an episode on luteal phase defects and increasing progesterone.
Progesterone.
She's the progesterone.
That's my jam.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So that's wonderful. Tell me, like, if I were somebody that went to Facebook today, first of all, how would I find this community? Like, is there something you have to do to join? And like, what does a day look like in terms of the kind of posts that fly through? Because I'm sure there's a wide variety.
Yes. So the community is called the Baby Dust Fertility Community. If you go to Facebook, you can search that. I will just throw out, we actually have a sister community we launched in the last 6 months called the Baby Dust Pregnancy Community. It's like a safe space for our members who have, gone through a season of infertility or recurrent losses to come into and talk about pregnancy once they get there. I like to throw that out
because it's not so triggering.
It's a unique space because that's a unique journey. But if you look up the Baby Dust Fertility Community, we ask that all members, before we approve them, answer a few basic questions, just agreeing to the rules. We do things a little different in our group. Because we want to try to keep it as best as possible, quality information, which is hard at the size that it is. I have an amazing admin team who does just a great job. But we do work really hard at this time to be sensitive about what type of images we allow to be posted. I put that out specifically for people who maybe don't like being in groups where you see baby announcements and you see pictures of this or that. I recognize, and we have that sometimes that's really hard. So we try to be sensitive to that. And then there's a few other specific things that we are really sensitive to. But posts are everything under the sun. And we kind of recognize that we have people at all stages who are coming into this group. So we have total newbies who maybe are just starting out on their trying to conceive journey, just trying to connect with others and figure out what exactly is the best path forward. And then we have people who have been trying for over a decade and who are just trying to hear from others. And posts will be everything from, can you help me get insight on how to read these OPKs, to I'm looking for ideas on what to ask at my next appointment, or what things I could try doing to implement at home. So it's like this wide breadth of stuff that's in there. But the thing that I really appreciate about how this community has grown is that we've really emphasized the support piece, because I want it to be more than just a place that you show up and you post your post and you ask your question and then maybe you comment on someone else's post and that's kind of it. We really try to make it so that we're actually supporting one another. So engaging posts like, drop a heart. It sounds so simple, but drop a heart to support other members who are maybe struggling through a loss this week, or what would you share about going through this procedure or that thing? And that's really made it a special place to get a lot of unique personal support and just experiences from other people as well.
I love that. Wow. That's really great. The fact that it's moderated, the fact that there are some ground rules that are upheld, and the fact that you sort of spur on the conversation with prompting to kind of, I do similar things in my online community because you just don't want people spiraling. And you just also don't want the, wacky lady that's like, a good alternative to eating cruciferous vegetables is essential oils, and I happen to sell them. And so you can click the link and you're like, enough with the essential oils, Leslie.
Yeah. Like, hey, I like a good essential oil diffusing,
Dude,
but
amen,
it's
but
not going to be the alternative to...
It's not an alternative to eating green vegetables. It's not the solution for everything in the world.
Yeah, and that's one thing we really crack down on. We don't want you coming into the group just so you can sell. Like, you want to sell, go somewhere else. If you want to come in here and you want to criticize people for what they're struggling with, this is not your space. And we've had a few firestorms of people getting really mad because we've said, look, this isn't the right community for you.
Yeah.
We want to support you. And the best way we can do that is asking you to leave. And that's
and
really
if you
hard.
don't leave, we will help you find a door.
We do. Yes, we do.
We will block your ass.
And we don't do that a lot because we really,
I get it. But
we don't
I also
get
get
it.
it.
Most people's hearts are good. And if you're gonna just troll to troll, that's not really like the right space. You're not gonna find this and go through all of that. There's plenty to troll in other places that don't have moderators if you're just looking to troll.
Yep,
So do you have like super members? Like I find this in my fertility course Facebook group where it's like this gal she's on her third PCOS baby since she joined the group. She really has implemented most of the things. And she's also literally binged everything I've ever said. And any podcast I've ever been on,
I love those people.
My podcast, she's listened to all 3 versions of the course now. Like I'm saying this as if I'm annoyed. I think she's fabulous.
I know. I'm thinking this.
and
I feel like you should give her a shout out.
No, truly.
Do you think she would like that?
There's 2 of them. And both of them I have approached to work for me at this point, and we're trying to build a budget to bring them both on.
That's a great idea.
Awesome.
So, but they're like the people that are like, they're in every post. And not only are they doing that, they're like the promoted moderator, because like if somebody posted a question for me and didn't tag me correctly, they're in the comments tagging me so that I see it.
Too like that also.
That's awesome.
It's the best. It's the best. I love
I'm
them.
talking about you.
Right. I'm not going to say your name.
Starts with a B and ends with an Ani. You know that I'm talking to you.
My 4-year-old. Anyway, are there members like that like are just, they're there because maybe they're doing really well and like this is the way they're pouring back into the community? Because I love that.
We have a few, and I find that it's probably seasonal because we've had some that are more like that. I can think of actually like 2 or 3, just like you're saying, who are like there and they're commenting and they're like, I'm in this space. But we have people who will circle back too, who have maybe been in the group then they temporarily departed because they had the joy of getting their positive test and then they had their baby, but then they come back and it's like, and they're like, I'm here because this group is what supported me through.
Yeah. And they're like more familiar with your catalog than yours. So when someone's like, what are you guys using instead of Hidden Valley Ranch? She's like tagging an old post, or like, have you listened to the podcast episode and like tagging that in there? You're like,
totally.
Look at this.
Yeah, it's the best.
This is better than I could do it.
Yeah. That's
okay,
awesome.
well, on this high of members who literally carry the torch and pave a way and are helpful resources, both in these communities and just as humans that have hearts for other humans, we're going to think about them as we take our next break to hear from our sponsors.
And when we come back, we're going to talk about what happens when you're in online communities that aren't going very well, because that is another big part of this. After a word from these sponsors.
Hey guys, we're taking a break from our episode and I want to talk about something that's super confusing. When you head down the supplement aisle and you're looking for a prenatal, and on the prenatal bottle itself, it says, do not take if you're trying to conceive, pregnant, or breastfeeding. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, it says, talk to your doctor if you are pregnant, could be pregnant, breastfeeding, postpartum, whatever. And every supplement has this. You go down the supplement aisle, you go shopping on whatever supplement website, and there's a disclaimer on every bottle of every single thing, which means that everything that you've been taking your whole life long is now a big question mark about whether or not you are potentially harming yourself by taking something where you're trying to be healthy. So that is why we partnered with Needed. Needed is a perinatal nutrition supplement brand that has a wide array of products specifically designed for women who are pregnant, trying to become pregnant, breastfeeding, or postpartum. So it's not just that these products like can work if you're in that situation, or oh, it's probably okay if you take it while you're trying to conceive. No. These products are researched, they are formulated, and they are put together specifically for women who are trying to conceive, pregnant, breastfeeding, and postpartum.
This answers so many questions. I always get asked, like, what can I take? It's cold and flu season. What's safe? Needed has an immune support. That's safe whether you're trying to conceive, pregnant. It's even safe for your little ones.
And it's not just immune support. They've got collagen. They've got hydration support. They have digestive support. They have prenatal multi. They even made a line for dudes.
Needed is somebody we're really proud to be partnering with. So head over to their website and use code FFF20 for 20% off your order.
Okay, we are back. And now we're going to talk about sort of navigating in the online world of all the social media things and the Googling things and the other people that are also using these resources things. Because as wonderful as it is to have online communities that are moderated by people like me and Hannah and Caitlin, that is a very small minority of what you will find out there. And with every bit of good, there is some bad. And so that's what Hannah's going to help us navigate today and help us learn how to cope with, I guess is the right way to say it. So Hannah, what do you have for us just off the top before we start asking you specific questions about it?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I always love to throw out here is that if you're in a Facebook community or something like that, obviously there are great communities that have great moderators. But
Obviously. Case in point.
Obviously, yes. But even with that, with the number of posts that we get in our community, I'm not able to be as active as I once was. Mm-hmm. And I always want to remind people, like, remember the space that you're in when you're asking for advice. The people who are answering you probably mean well, but they may not actually have good factual insight into what they're saying to you. And so that's like the first thing off the top that I always like to say, because it's so easy to get in there and be like, oh, these are my people. We've all been doing the same things. But just because they're your people doesn't mean that they're going to give you the right next 3 steps. And so just be cautious as you're reading that, reading comments, reading responses, because people get really defensive if you question them on something, or they tell you something and it's like, this is the only way. But just proceed carefully.
That's great advice.
Another thing I'd say about online communities, especially in Facebook, there is a very powerful entrepreneurial movement where in the last 4 to 5 years, people have been told, go to Facebook, create a community, let people in for free, and then sell to them. Yeah. And so there are a lot of communities out there. And I remember seeing a lot of colleagues do this, especially early COVID, where they were in there moderating and then they were the only one allowed to sell in the community. And so just be careful. I think this is true with Instagram algorithms, and you can like extrapolate this beyond just Facebook communities. But the echo chamber is real. And so like when you get into an algorithm or into a closed community, sometimes you've just surrounded yourself with one message or one type of people and maybe not even an expert. And so like really, it's not just about like being aware of the community at large and what they're saying, but also like, who is this person, or like what's the origin story of this community in and of itself. So like, just be cautious of an echo chamber.
That's so good.
Yeah. And I would add to that the echo chambers we create for ourselves, because we do with every click, with every like, with every follow, with every unfollow, we are getting a curated feed dedicated to what the algorithm thinks we want to see and hear.
And what you might buy.
And what you might buy. That's another piece of it too. All these social media apps are for profit. And so that is very important to keep in mind, because that gives us this false sense that we are never supposed to see anything that we don't like. And that if we do see or hear something that triggers us or offends us, we have every right to get up in arms about that. Because it makes it start to feel like somebody came into your house smoking a cigarette, or somebody came onto your property with their loud barking dog. It gives you that kind of sense that you're being invaded. It's something private to you is being invaded by something that you don't want there, that you don't like, that you don't think should even exist. And it can really make you living in a world where you're never challenged, where you're never triggered, and if in rare occasions something like that happens, it makes it feel so much bigger and so much more offensive, and it lingers, and you feel so upset about it for a long time, and it can make things feel a lot worse than they maybe actually are. So I just like to kind of caution you with that, is we're not supposed to walk through life never triggered, never offended, never challenged. But because this app wants you coming back for more and more and more and more, spending more and more and more time on it, it'll get you feeling like that is the way your life is supposed to be lived. And it just creates these very exaggerated, even physiological responses to this sort of negative stimulus.
Absolutely.
That's so true. My husband's a software developer and entrepreneur. And one of the things he always likes to point out is that these apps are built with you as the product. The app itself is not the product. You are, because they want you to feel like you can't get off of it, like you can't miss even the tiniest thing. And that just supercharges everything you've said, because you've got this connection feeling like, oh, well, of course I have to go back. Of course I have to engage, or something has offended me. So of course I'm going to tell you
I have every
what I'm
right.
thinking. This is my domain,
It almost, it feels as though somebody came into your house and was like, hey, Hannah, did you know that the Bible was written by a troll under a bridge in 1893? And you're like, that is not true. And you want to be like, and I will fight you about it. I have so much data to support it. And it just seems like somebody came into your space with this versus
a really good point.
Feeling like you just overheard someone else's conversation on the train.
And I mean, I, as a business owner and entrepreneur myself, see that, and also see the flip side of it, where it's like they could be following one of the three of us and a handful of other really good quality, ethical, using research as their information, also have clinical practice, all those things. And they're getting really good information from our page. And then the next story that comes up is some fitness influencer or some, insert bad information creator.
That's what's got me concerned about us being on YouTube now, is we don't control the ads that come on between episodes. And so it could be very well be like the fat flush diet or something.
Oh, it can be. I mean, I listen to Christian music all the time on YouTube and and with my children. And then the next ad that comes on right now, because we're recording this in October, even though you're going to hear this probably in January, it's all about Halloween. We have no control over it, and people know that. And so they know that it's not us. But what I'm trying to point out is you need to not only be careful in the online community or who you're choosing to follow, but that impact of the fitness influencer that lost 60 pounds since their last baby in 3 months. You might consume that and think man, I'm really behind the butt because I haven't even lost a pound. And in fact, I gained some because I'm so hungry while I'm eating postpartum and breastfeeding. And that's actually okay. And actually probably more healthy for you and your baby. But if you are just being swirled around in this algorithm, and that fitness person is paying a little bit to be in your feed, because that happens, we as creators can do that. You may not even catch that it's a sponsored story, right? And as Hannah was talking about her husband saying that we are the product, I created my whole PCOS app because I didn't want the fitness influencer behind me. I wanted you to get good information and get off of Instagram. So you knew you were in this like environment that was curated for you with PCOS. And so I think that there are really innovative solutions out there, not just my own, not just Hannah's, not just Sophia's courses and other things she produces in this podcast. There are so many. It's like, how do we dig out those gems? Like, what should we be looking for in the experts that deliver information in a way that we do consume? Potentially, and since this episode's kind of about the internet, I'm thinking in like a free or a very low cost type of buy-in. How do we find those people?
Yeah.
And are there practical steps we can take to root out the ones that we need to stop from being in our feed?
I think that's a great question, and that like is at the core of the struggle. I was talking to another dietitian who works here in Ohio, and we were discussing, I think about a month ago, just the struggle that she and her colleagues are really noticing and differentiating from others, you know, very well educated providers who have done great work. And, you know, I've noticed that thanks to things like Canva, which makes our life easier as creators, you now have this insertion of like all of these perfectly polished, seemingly put together accounts. And one of the first things that I always look for is, well, I guess there's a couple things when I'm constantly vetting different accounts for like, would this be a good fit to bring on my show? Is this the type of expert that I would want to recommend to my community? I'm always looking for one, what type of information are they sharing? Are they sharing some really extreme, sensational content? Because if they're sharing some really extreme, sensational content, that often has me like, okay, hold on here. Let's like take a step back and figure out what's going on. Second thing is if they're not willing to put their credentials either in their bio or on their website, where did they get educated? What did they do? And, you know, there's a lot of good information out there, but if you're not willing to like put out, like, I studied here, I'm certified through this, I did this or that, that always makes me question, because I want to know, like, what is the journey that brought you here? And if you're not willing to share that with me, that makes me just a little bit more cautious when I am considering you or your content. Right. And so those are like two big things. And I feel like just simply asking those two questions says a lot. Also, if you see them collaborating with others, if you see them being mentioned by others, that gives you some insight into just who it is that's
respected by their peers. Are other people
Yeah. Are they currently collaborating with other people who are clearly well respected in this space? And there's a lot of people who share good information. Like, I'm not trying to throw people under the bus, but there's also a lot of people that look really great online that maybe are not quite the right ones to be following for insight and advice.
It's interesting because there are voices in this space like Nicole Jardim. Is that how you say her last name?
Yeah.
She's got some really great information out there and not a whole lot of credentials behind it. But
yeah, we've had her on our show even. You can go back and listen to her.
You know, so there are people, I've actually worked with a few people that have come to me for help or referred people to me who have a very valid niche and they're actually recommending really good things compared to their OBGYN who flat out told a woman with PCOS, you're not going to get pregnant unless you take this pill.
Or to go on the slim fast diet. I had somebody recently, P.S., not in 1993.
Right.
Somebody in the past 5 years who was told that by their PCOS specialist OBGYN.
And that's where it's really hard because it's like, well, my OBGYN's telling me crazy things or has one tool in the toolbox to help me. And these sensational things actually sound more like something I'd be willing to do and don't require me taking a prescription. I think there's a little bit of human nature that wants that. Like, that's why diet culture does well, is because we've tried so many things and not one of those things has worked. And so there must be like the one golden ticket that Charlie and the Chocolate Factory got. Like, what is the one mystery thing, that ingredient from the rainforest, or, this one, whatever, insert it here. because that must be the thing I'm missing, because nothing's worked before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I feel like there is that desire to, like, well, if you've done all the boring basic stuff, well, it must be that we just have to go crazy and do all of the crazy stuff in order to achieve. And they're, you know, they always share that you always will see the success stories, but you won't always see the stories of people who tried that and it didn't work out so well. And so that's what I think is, you know, it goes back to the influencer culture, where I think that in some cases does the disservice when we just show the picture and the story of the people who have, you know, had that miraculous success. And that's great. I'm so excited when, you know, women have gone through this struggle and suddenly they are expecting. That's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm so
we're always going to
excited.
celebrate babies born. We're always going to celebrate
Absolutely.
healthy pregnancies. Always.
Yeah.
And we're not going to say, well, you're pregnant, but you shouldn't have taken that apple cider vinegar gummy. Like, we're not going to do that. But it just doesn't, not everything means so much, I guess, is really what I'm trying to say. Just because someone
we should put
did
that on a
something-
shirt.
You know
Not
what? I
everything
got
means
that.
so much.
Yeah, that's a
Sophia
good
Pavia, Food Freedom Fertility podcast.
I actually, it's sort of a plagiarism, because there's a binge eating specialist, Nicole Ryan, and she talks about you don't have to make it mean so much. So I ate a lot of Oreos. It doesn't have to mean something about me. It doesn't have to mean anything. It just means I ate Oreos. And I have tried to sort of apply that to so much. Caitlin and I have come out of a church that was wonderful in a lot of ways, but there were a lot of things that weren't so wonderful. And one of the not so wonderful things is everything meant so much. Every thought, every prayer, it all meant so much about you. It meant so much about your faith. Your faith meant the outcomes of your prayers. It was very, very stressful. And it's instead of just being like, I'm really anxious about this, it doesn't have to mean so much. It doesn't mean so much about you as a Christian, you as a mother, you as a wife, you as a person. It just is. You're just anxious right now about this. It is what it is. But yeah, that's not everything. And it's just sort of the way we go when we don't know what to do, is you look at anyone's success story with this like magnifying glass, like, show me the map. How did you find the way? Where, like, it's a freaking episode of the Goonies or something, where you're going to like find this treasure key and follow this wacky path and find all the rich treasure. But it's not actually really like that in real life. And there isn't going to be this one thing that someone did, unless that one thing is managing their diet and lifestyle.
And timing
Which is
sex
really
well.
like 100 things. And timing sex well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so hard to like not want that. Like, I get that.
I want it too. I want it about everything.
You know, especially when you've been trying for a long time, you've maybe been on this journey before and you're like, I just want that one thing that's going to make this easy. I want that one thing that's going to be like, that's what did it. But it's just like anything in life. It's rarely ever just one thing. It's always a combination.
And there will always be outliers, listeners. Like we mentioned Nicole Jardim. Okay, she is great. And she didn't really go to a fancy university to study medicine and all these things. But she's respected by her peers. She works with a lot of experts. She reads a lot of research, and not just the research that she wants to read that only supports her stance. She's an outlier, in my opinion, and there are always going to be outliers. There are going to be influencers or people that don't have credentials, that maybe are or do and are new to the field and so haven't collaborated with people much or whatever, that can be wonderful. So we're just talking about like a rule of thumb. It doesn't necessarily completely exclude everyone that doesn't fit this criteria. It's just something to look out for, because we all know there are people that are extremely well educated that travel in very prestigious circles that know jack diddly about fertility, nutrition. And there are people that are keyboard warriors who have spent day and night on Google Scholar and have been through the ringer, like the people that are like our diehard fans that probably know a lot more about this than whoever has a bunch of letters behind their name. There will always be outliers.
That's such a great point. Mm-hmm.
I think too, just recognizing like a little bit of inward or self-reflection that because we are humans and we have human nature, we are looking for that one simple answer or that one sensational or extreme thing that we haven't tried yet, which is also an overlap of what people in business call a niche. Like if you haven't tried going keto yet, well, there's the keto fertility dietitian. It's her niche and it's a crazy solution. Like, remember that you are in somewhat of a vulnerable position to be preyed upon. And so guard yourself. Like I watched a Instagram story yesterday about somebody talking about they don't let their children that are 4, 8 even go to the bathroom alone in public or at a park because she had an instance where she walked in as an adult once and saw a middle-aged man in the women's room who was very upset that she walked in and not a small child. And we are talking about a vulnerable population, right? My 4-year-old walks into the bathroom at the park and I can see her walking in. I can see her walking out. I can no longer see her behind those doors. She's vulnerable. And we live in a world where we have to be vigilant and aware. Like, know that about yourself. It's not that you're weak. You're vulnerable to somebody coming in with that extreme, sensational, niche-y message. And take a step back and just say, like, is it common sense here? Keto, I'm trying to have a baby. Like, where are all the fruits and vegetables? Like, you may not need our degrees collectively to look at that and go, this probably isn't a great fit.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that again and say, hell hath no fury like a mother whose choices are not supported in an online forum. Hell hath no fury as a mother whose choices is not confirmed by something she saw on social media. There are truly, there is this lioness inside of a lot of moms. And no matter what you post, if it doesn't line up with her lived experience and she has any level of guilt or shame about
Or
that,
trauma.
trauma, no matter how internalized, she's either going to have to face the fact that she's been traumatized, maybe her own choices contributed to that, or you can be dead ass wrong. Which one seems more comfortable to you? This person's wrong and everything I do is right, or I maybe did some things, chose some things, or people that I trust did these things to me, and it's this whole messy, traumatic thing, or Caitlin's an asshole. What would be the better? What would be more comfortable for you? And I see this like,
And those people are loud.
They're so loud.
They're loud. They're the minority, but they're loud. And so
they are. Like just today, one of the ladies I follow was like, 6 things to support pain relief for an unmedicated birth, and it was just like a few body positions and things like that. The comments, she didn't make any assumption about who should or shouldn't be. She did doing unmedicated. She doesn't make any assumptions about the risks or benefits of medication. She just said, if you are hoping to not use medicine, here are some things you can do to make it comfortable. And the comments were just these moms being like, the best thing I've ever done in my life as a mother was get an epidural. Ladies, there is no medal for not getting one. It was the most, best experience. And just going on about so extreme because, boy, if she got this epidural and this other lady went through something and didn't, what does that mean about her? What does that mean about me? What does that mean about a mom, a woman? Like, that's too messy to face. I need to tear down the person that's promoting she's not even promoting it. She's saying, if you want this, but that's just the level of like internalized guilt and shame and trauma that people have. And you're going to see that so much, especially when people are acutely experiencing this. They can either face it or they can double down. And when you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound for a lot of this. And I see so much of that, like even a pelvic floor physical therapist talking about how a weak pelvic floor can contribute to early labor and things like that, which is absolutely supported by science, and women in the comments who've gone into labor early just freaking out, freaking out. And that happens a lot. And it's not going to be about you. It's about that woman and her issues. But when you're really vulnerable, that can be so painful and so traumatic, especially when you're in a community where you felt like these
You
people,
belonged
you're one of
and they
us.
were, yes.
Yeah.
And Sophia is really talking to us too,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we are the target of a lot of that. But before we move on, I have a couple more questions for you, Hannah. Let's hear from our last sponsor. I'm so excited to tell you that the PCOS app is sponsoring this podcast episode. The PCOS app is a one-stop shop for all things PCOS. It's also your meal guide and inspo all in one. If you love listening to me on this podcast and you feel like, hey, I want Caitlin to be in my ear every day encouraging me about how to manage my PCOS, then you have to go download the PCOS app. We have curated articles to answer questions that you have about PCOS. There are short snippets in the PCOS Answers podcast exclusive to the PCOS app. We also have recipes where I not only give you the recipe, but teach you within the recipe itself what I have done to make it more blood sugar and hormone supporting so that you can take your own recipes and make them more PCOS friendly. If you've been looking for the Google of all things PCOS with the filter of compassion and expertise that you get from Caitlin Johnson, RD, then you have found it in the PCOS app. Head to your Android or Apple store today, download it, and let's hang out. Hey guys, I am really excited to announce that we are doing a giveaway where we are partnering with Needed. They're a complete nutritional system for fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, and women's health. This is the supplement brand that is sponsoring us in this season of the Food Freedom Fertility podcast. And they are very generously offering a complete plan. So that includes their prenatal, a choice from their omega options, collagen protein, and a pre and probiotic. So 4 different containers of things that are going to help you either in your fertility story or if you're pregnant. These are safe for both cases, even postpartum. So if you are listening to this podcast and you're in any one of those stages, hey girl, welcome. This giveaway is for you. So to enter into the giveaway, what you need to do is go to YouTube. You can get there from either the link in our Instagram, or you can just go to youtube.com and then type in Food, Freedom, and Fertility. You're going to look for our happy little pink logo and you're going to click on it. You get to any episode of this season's podcast, doesn't matter. And what we want you to do is subscribe to that channel. That way you're going to know when a new video drops. These videos are the videos of the audio recording. So if you actually want to feel like you're hanging out with us while we're recording the podcast, girl, you can. So head over to YouTube, hit subscribe. And for you to get one entry, you also need to hop into one of the episodes and either ask a question or leave a comment on the episode. So if you're watching the episode, you just kind of scroll down and then click on that comment section. You also need to go to Needed, their Instagram page, and follow their Instagram. Okay, so one entry equals following Needed on their Instagram, going to YouTube. We're going to check these things, going to YouTube and subscribing to our YouTube channel and commenting on a video. If you want additional entries, go to a different episode, leave a different question or a different comment. Okay. So we're trying to establish more followers on our YouTube channel with this giveaway. If you would like even more entries, you can head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a written review. Leave us some stars. If you've already done that, then hop on your partner's phone or your mom's or your girlfriend's and leave a rating there. We will choose in about 2 weeks the winner of this, and we will contact you, get your address, and send you a complete plan from Needed. Isn't this exciting? So head over to YouTube, subscribe, Food Freedom and Fertility, leave some comments or questions on videos, follow @Needed on Instagram. And if you want to get additional entries, head over to Apple and leave a review. Now back to our episode. All right, we are back from our final break. We have a couple more questions for Hannah, a couple topics to talk through.
Girl.
And yeah, girl. So while social media, Facebook forums, online courses, podcasts, apps, these can all be super helpful. They can also be like this disconnection from real life, and you can start in on it and then realize 2 hours later you've just been scrolling TikTok and you're no longer looking at the fertility provider that brought you over there. You're now watching somebody scare their dog and laughing at it for an hour. Like, you know, you can end up wasting hours of your life.
That's as good as
innocuous. Yeah, right.
Yeah. What's more likely is you've gone into the comments on something that was mildly controversial, and you've read a bunch of people spewing their vitriol because their personal choices aren't supported, and you are seething on the inside. Let's be real.
Blood pressure,
likely where you've gone.
Blood pressure went up. Cortisol was released. You are no longer going to fall asleep peacefully. And I think that the conversation on how to have healthy boundaries with these things in this culture and time that we live in is a piece of this. And so not only finding the resources, finding the community, how can you benefit from, even contribute to, and also have boundaries, both time and emotional, to keep you healthy.
Yeah, you know, I think that we just have to like start by going back a little bit to what we said about you are the product on these apps, which sounds so weird to say, but just to remember that you are what these apps are designed to capture and entertain, because they want you to scroll. They want you to spend all this time. They want you to live your life on here, not in the real world, because they want you to buy the next thing. And they want, you know, it is a money-making game at the end of the day. But, you know, one of the things that I always think is that we, like you said, we get in these spaces sometimes because we don't feel like we have a community in real life. We find that community on here because the people in our circle, for whatever reason, don't understand what we're going through.
Or it just takes effort. And
or it takes effort.
It takes no effort to pick up your phone and look at it.
Right.
It takes effort to maintain a friendship with someone in real life.
Yeah. And so there's like a lot of reasons why you end up there. But the challenge is when you end up on these apps constantly, you end up just scrolling, just reading, getting emotionally charged by people's comments. You know, we kind of lose touch with the real existence. We don't live in the present moment. We just live on this app. And so carving out a space where maybe you give yourself a certain amount of time every day where you are allowing, just enjoying whatever this space is. You know, you can get on your phone and put a timer, which can feel so hard at first, but limiting the amount of time you allow yourself on these apps can be really great. And you know, if you think about all the time that I think we end up spending, you know, weekends, especially when we are not going, you know, you're not working, maybe you're just relaxing, you end up scrolling for a lot of time. I mean, I think we end up doing that during the week too, if we're not careful, because it's way too easy to lay in bed at night, and why in the world put your phone down when you could keep scrolling instead of sleeping, you know? But really establishing like ground rules for yourself. Like, this is the time that I'm okay with doing this. And this is the time where I'm going to maybe let myself be bored. You know, that kind of sounds scary, because when we're bored, we kind of let ourselves actually think. We actually
feel.
Start working on stuff. Maybe if that's too scary, you know, is there a little hobby that you've had that you maybe want to reconnect with? You know, a lot of us have these hobbies that sit in a closet. You know, I don't know if anyone else has these closet hobbies that you bought and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to love this.
Something that I do that's not a hobby, maybe we could consider it a hobby, is I sit and remember things that that make me laugh.
Oh,
and my most laughing thing right now is this, like, it was one of those, you know, there's like nostalgia pages on Instagram, and it was about that CD Pure Moods from the 90s. That was like all this weird Enya spiritual music. And my husband was like, can't even tell you. It's so funny.
And I can't even follow it. I have no idea what you're even saying right now.
Yeah.
But it did its job. It made you laugh really hard.
2 weeks ago that this happened, and I still laugh at it incessantly because my husband's humor is so dry. So dry. He's not the guy that's like, hey, everybody, I'm funny. Listen to me. He's just like living life. And he's so funny to me. But he was saying, like, if you listen to this CD, what did I even say?
Oh, Lord.
Oh, my God, I'm turning into my mother before your eyes. He was like, if you listen to the CD, by the time it's over, you are going to be...
She can't even get to it. All right.
I'm embarrassing myself. This is Patty. I'm my mom right now. And my grandma used to do this too. She would get to laughing so hard no one knew what the hell she was talking about.
That's
and
my husband.
Standing there looking at her, laughing hysterically as we're all like looking at each other like,
do.
I gotta finish this thought. He said if you listen to
You can't do it. We got to move away from it, and then you just need to like insert
I'm embarrassing myself. Oh, I'm sweating. I'm sweating. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. Oh, blah, blah, blah.
But see, like that, like you're missing out
Your
on
hobby is
Yeah, when your closet hobby is Sophia laughing so hard she can't even speak.
hobby is being a freaking loser that can't even communicate on her own podcast. Who's laughing so hysterically that she's embarrassing herself? This is my hobby, being a goober.
It's okay. Yeah, but I
But
feel
you
like
know what? I tell you, it's good for your hormones to have a good laugh.
Oh yeah.
Even if it's something dumb your husband said 2 weeks ago. But really, sit and remember funny things. Like when he said, if you listen to the Pure Mood CD, by the time it's done, you're going to be a weirdo. The way he said it.
Oh, Lord. All right, I'm moving us on because...
Yeah.
For myself.
But yeah, it's like this. You have an
know
opportunity.
that I had rolled quarters and saved my parents' change so that I could call the number on the TV and buy that CD, and I used to listen to it all the time when I was like middle school.
Did you say to him, you married the weirdo? Like I am. I am the product of Pure Moods, which I've never heard of before. I wonder, we're going to have to poll our audience when we release this episode and see, has anybody else ever heard of it?
I feel like I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever listened to it.
It's like all spiritual music. I'm shocked my parents let me get that. Drift away with the serene sound of tubular bells.
All right. So, Hannah, I have one more question for you. Any last words of wisdom in navigating the internet crazy while trying to conceive? Anything we haven't touched on? Anything else you want to say to our listeners?
Yeah. So I think finishing kind of the thought that I've explored throughout this whole conversation. Obviously, I appreciate what we've said about not being afraid of potentially seeing things that could disagree with what we're doing. Yes. Like be open to that. Like if it's good to have to be challenged to either, first of all, prove out that what you are doing or believing or implementing, right. You might find that, hey, this thing that I've been doing might actually not be good for me.
Maybe
or
eating
you might find
all the pasta isn't the right move for my PCOS.
Yeah, daily pasta meals, maybe not.
Yeah.
Sounds delicious.
You can eat pasta daily with PCOS. You can. Absolutely. You just need to do it with other things. It can't be a meal of just noodles in a bowl. You can have some noodles
the way to
with
have it, right?
and protein. And
sorry, that's sarcasm for anyone listening.
Oh, boy. Okay, so be willing to be challenged by actual experts or people with evidence-based information.
Yeah, and be open to that because, you might not know what you discover. Like it can be one of the most challenging, but also one of the most eye-opening things to be like, oh, hey, this this new perspective with this new insight, or I've never heard of this research has been presented to me. And now I can make a more informed decision, because I think that at the end of the day is the biggest thing, is being able to be informed enough that you can make a decision with the accurate knowledge in front of you. Like if we just get one perspective and one side of the story, you know, you're going to have a really limited ability to decide for yourself. But if you're okay with being like, okay, I'll evaluate this. It might not be right, but I'm going to do my due diligence to consider it. You can feel more confident that you have made that next step in a positive and healthy manner.
Absolutely. Okay, so I would love to hear, and we'll throw all this in the show notes, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, I want to join her community, or what's her podcast name again? And is she on any other social channels? Tell us where people can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Facebook community, if you head to Facebook, is the Baby Dust Fertility Community. It's named the same as the podcast, the Baby Dust Fertility Podcast, which you can find that on all major podcasting platforms. We post on Mondays, so every week on a Monday, we get a new episode out. And then I am active on Instagram at Hannah Bowers, INHC. I try to share, you know, really key points from the podcast episodes. I try to share like little tips, suggestions, and just really connect anyone who has followed me there with other experts who are going to just be helpful on the journey.
Awesome. Okay, before we head into our Yeah Girls, I would just love to maybe hear a little bit about this side of your story, or a message of hope. Since I don't know if you knew this about our podcast, but Sophia and I are both Christian. We believe in God. We believe in a God that does miracles and is for babies.
Means you well, wants you to be healthy, wants you to prosper.
And believes that children are blessings, and is for you in this journey. And so if there was a piece of your journey, which I feel like I remember us connecting on a little bit, that was faith-centered, prayer-centered, if you want to share kind of that window into your story, or what that, how that was helpful to you. And then maybe just like a hopeful note to end for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, you know, one of the things that, you know, it can be a struggle when you are active in a church is, you know, understandably, you know, that's the blessing of, you know, have kids. You know, we see that in the Bible all the time. And I remember kind of mentally kind of struggling through that a little bit, like in our early journey, because it was like, you know, I see clearly written out here in the word that, you know, people are blessed with children and children are like this gift, but we're over here like, hey, it's not really happening. And I really dug in and started reading. You know, there are several stories in the Bible of women who struggled to conceive, and just seeing that the Lord provided for them through that he, you know, Hannah, you know, everybody goes back to Hannah, kind of, you know, the same name here, but reading that story and just seeing that God provided a child in these situations, and God saw these women, which is something that was really encouraging to me. Like, you know, I am not invisible to him, and I am not invisible in this journey. And so that was just something that I had to really focus in on repeatedly, you know, because it was like, you know, you go through some cycles where you're not conceiving, or you're still trying to see the changes from the positive shifts from the changes that you've made. And it's like, okay, God, where are you here? But that was just one of the most hopeful things that I think really just journeyed with me through this, especially, you know, in our church communities. We have so many babies and so many moms who just don't seem to have a struggle in this area. And most of my good friends, which I'm grateful for, I would not wish for any of my community and any of my friends and the others in our church to have this struggle. But, you know, the majority of the moms at our church have multiple children fairly close together. And so it's just a different journey. And so for anyone who's listening and sees that in their church community, I just want you to know that you are not invisible. You are seen by our Creator who loves you. And while, you know, we look around and we're like, it's not fair, because that's how our humanness, you know, always goes back to, like, it's not fair. How does so-and-so get to do that? You know, the end of the day is, you're not forgotten and you are loved through this. And so that is what I would encourage you with, to know that it's not a punishment. You are beautifully and wonderfully created. We're working on memorizing that verse with my kids of, God created you in your mother's womb. Like, he knew you and he still knows you. So that would be the biggest thing that,
I love that. I have
if anyone
goosebumps.
takes away nothing else, just take that away.
Yeah, we need to do a whole episode just on that. Sophia and I have that on the books.
Yeah,
and
it's just neither of us are grand theologians, and so we're sort of dragging our feet on doing an episode about that. But we can just come to it as we are. That can happen
that's
too.
good too. Yeah, it makes me think of a song somebody sent me when I was trying to conceive about how God is there in the waiting. And you see that throughout scripture, not just with fertility, but he was there in the waiting when Joseph was in Egypt and helping and setting things in motion. He was in the waiting when the children of Israel disobeyed and got carried away to Babylon, and there was protection and provision. And I mean, men walked into a fire unscathed, and there was a fourth with them, comforting them in that process. Like, God is there in the hard, in the fire, in the waiting. And we can be like people who, don't necessarily see it with our five senses. Like in the Old Testament, when there were angels around in a battle, when they looked few and the opposition was many, and they prayed and opened the eyes so that they can see, and they saw the hosts of angels on chariots. And we can see God in the waiting. We may not see the angels around us. We may not see what he's doing now to help get you there. We may not see how he's going to make your story come together right now. I feel like one thing that I've seen so beautifully, and I'm sure you both can relate to this, is like, I work with a lot of people with PCOS, and I'm no prophet and I'm not God. I can't see inside your body or inside your husband's body. I'm not a superhero with, some sort of supernatural vision to see like, oh, there are sperm there. Oh, I just saw you ovulate. I can't tell you when you're going to get pregnant, but I can tell you I've seen a lot of these stories that seemed insurmountable, seemed like there was no way, seemed way too long. I've seen stories just like yours get the ending that you're praying and dreaming for. And
so many times
it can be a comforting thing to hear. Man, add God to that he's there with you in the waiting. Even when it may feel like he's not, he is. And he can handle your hard moments, your questioning, your doubts. He's there. He can handle that, and he will still be with you in the waiting.
That's so good. And I think it's also good to remember that we read stories and we see the ending, but we don't always see that middle point where whether it's other believers or things that happened in scripture, we don't see that struggle. But I remember really feeling challenged at one point to ask the question of like, what is God doing in this season? I might not be where I want to be and where I'm praying to be, but what is he doing right here that I don't want to miss? Because even in this space of where, you're in that struggle, you're working towards getting pregnant, overcoming, certain aspects of something that's going on, he's got something for you right there. And if we are willing to trust him and prayerfully move through this, then we can experience whatever that is that he has for us. And, there's so many times where I look back and I'm like, wow, in that moment, I didn't realize what was happening. But I am so thankful because, I grew in this way, or now I have this opportunity to be a blessing to someone else who might be struggling here. So there's, there is a purpose for the struggle. We just might not be able to see it.
All right. Well, hardly seems like we need to do a yeah girl at all at this point, but such is our custom. So let's do it anyway.
Sophia loves customs and rituals.
I
She's
do!
looking for it. She is looking for it.
I'm looking for it. Maybe that's why I like that spiritual CD so much as
Oh
a
my
child.
gosh. You needed the transformation.
I am
Hannah,
still, I can't believe, for you guys that listened, if we didn't edit out my incessant giggling, the fact that you're still listening to this and you revere me as any sort of a professional is wonderful.
they're
Thank
here
you.
for it. They're
There's
here for
my
it.
yeah, girl. I was able to stop giggling and finish this episode.
So, Hannah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with our podcast, but we like to celebrate something at the end of episodes. Can be personal, professional, you name it. And maybe Sophia and I will go first if Sophia wants another one on top of what she just said.
You go, Caitlin. You do a yeah, girl.
Okay, I have a really big yeah, girl. I've been really mad at a supplier for supplements because we've been back ordered since July.
Oh,
and
boy.
I've been told week by week it's coming. And I've made promises to people because I've been told it's coming. And then I was told it shipped on October 4th, and then it never showed up. And I inquired
boy.
again, and it wasn't there. We're recording on the 18th. On the 16th, I was told actually it didn't ship, and the new date is November 15th. And I did a lot of talking. And you may not know this about me. Like, you don't want to mess with me when the
No.
mama bear comes out or but in
Caitlin,
a very,
don't take no jive.
no, in a very, like, I climbed the ladder to the highest people, had the conversations, was told there was no product. You have to wait till November. Kept pushing. And like minutes before this podcast started recording, I got shipment confirmation. So
La la.
I've had people that have been kind and gracious and patient waiting for product since July that within like 4 days, we'll be able to package it and ship it out. And this is one of those like supply chain woes that is frustrating. And I never knew could be a thing as bad as it was. And frankly, like, the supply chain is one thing. The communication misfires were really the wrong thing. But I'm just like, I'm palpably relieved at this point that I don't need to send an email out to like 50 people being like, once again, I'm sorry, and wait another month, or would you like your money back? So I'm just feeling like all sorts of relief right now. Yeah, girl.
Oh, yeah, girl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, girl. Oh, boy. Okay, so what's my yeah, girl? I guess we talked about this before we hit record. And maybe even by the time this episode is released, my husband has announced that I will be able to show his face. Yeah, we'll just say he's considering a career change at this point. And because of that, we might be able to reveal his superhero hidden identity.
So
That's
fun.
exciting.
You can
I
see
can't
his
wait.
handsome face.
I can't wait. I got to hear his voice yesterday, and it just made me happy because Louis is just like truly one of the best people I've ever met in so many different ways. Like, he's so genuine, he's so integral, he's so thoughtful. Like, he does everything he does with purpose, which I think, especially in this day and time, people tend to be on the other end of that spectrum. It's like, oh, I didn't really mean to do that, but he's just so great. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, so you might be able to see this stud face coming on our show, coming on my Instagram page, maybe even.
Love
Exciting.
it. Hannah, what do you want to celebrate today? Yeah, girl. Yeah, Louie.
So this is like not at all related to my main fertility work and whatnot. So
Doesn't
I
need
hope
to
that's
be.
okay. All right. So we are kind of those crazy people who always have like 8 things going. And we are opening a indoor sandbox play space here in Columbus.
That's so fun.
And we had the longest delays when it came to getting our permits. And about a week and a half ago, we finally got permits in hand to renovate our space. And so as of this week, Our contractors are in and they are building out the space. And I think we have about 4 weeks until that's done. So this is like one of those huge, like, oh my goodness, we're getting
What
close.
a brilliant idea.
Wow, we want to go to Columbus and
in
play in
Ohio
a play
winters.
space.
Come on over.
Yeah.
You
Ohio,
just come.
right?
Yeah. You come and play. It's going to be awesome.
Well, I do come to Ohio every once in a while, and I think my sister might be moving back there to Dayton, which isn't that far
It's
from
only an hour
you.
from us or so.
Yeah, so get some
You're gonna have
Jenny's
to take
ice
a trip.
cream, come play in some sand.
Well, we're
Eat some Tom's
located.
potato chips.
We're located just down from the Jenny's in
Oh.
Dublin, so you
Oh,
can
so
come
fun.
play, and then you can just jump down the road and go get yourself some ice
I
cream.
love that. I
There you
love,
go.
love that. It'll be like we're on the beach in the sand eating ice cream,
It'd be super
but
fun.
not really. You probably don't want the
There you
ice
go.
cream in your sand.
Yeah,
So
preferably
fun.
not.
This was the best episode ever, self-proclaimed. If you like
I
us,
feel like
love
it had
us.
some rough points for me particularly, but I'm glad that you feel good
Still want
about
to hang
it.
out with Sophia after her giggling fits. Please hit subscribe. If you're on YouTube, you can also subscribe to our channel, like this, share it with somebody who maybe you know that's also in a similar boat, wants to find community. Maybe Hannah's online Facebook group would be a great place to hang out a little bit, or just might be encouraged by maybe the best few minutes of the whole episode at the end where we actually talked about the one that has the power to heal us all.
Yeah.
But we can't wait to continue educating you. Thanks for hanging out with us for the last hour and almost a half, and we'll be here next week.
Adios. Hey, it's Sophia. If you love the show and want to continue your health and fertility journey using our resources, head on over to FoodFreedomFertility.com for show notes, links to products and services, information about our guests, and our newsletter. Again, that's FoodFreedomFertility.com. Thanks for listening.